Welcome to Salon Talks. I'm Mary Elizabeth Williams, and this is Deborah Norville. She is an Emmy Award-winning journalist, and entrepreneur, and author. You know her from her decades now?
Decades,
hosting. You're the longest running
anchor on American television.
Congratulations.
Thank you, and 28 years at Inside Edition, which is crazy, but thank you people for watching.
Deborah, I remember when you started, and it was a big deal.
Yeah,
so congratulations on that. And among other things, you are also an executive producer. You executive produced a show about the Lifetime television movie about the Gilgo Beach Killer. It is now, it came out 2 years ago, but now because of recent developments that we're going to talk about, it has been added some new information, and it's going to be re-airing on Lifetime. Hi, welcome, Deborah.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the chance to talk about it because there is so much to talk about.
There's so much new, but let's go back. Take me back. This story has been going on, we were just talking, for 13 years now, right? When the first bodies were initially found. You have been covering true crime and these stories for so long. When did you realize this was a story that you wanted to follow and chase after?
Well, it's interesting. It was definitely a story that we were covering at Inside Edition just because it was such a compelling story. I mean, the idea, first it was just the 4 bodies that they found that we now call the Gilgo 4. But these 4 bodies were found on Gilgo Beach, and then more bodies were found, and ultimately 11 bodies were found. Clearly the work of a serial killer, or killers, plural, but no one knew. And for all these years, the crimes went unsolved. So we're covering the story from our base here in New York City, but it was really a national story because of the enormity of it. We don't have a whole lot of serial killings that we know about as they're happening. And this case was ongoing, but this case wasn't getting anywhere, and that's what made it so interesting. You had 11 dead bodies. You've got the Suffolk County Police Department, which is a huge entity, and they couldn't get anywhere. Well, ancillary to their investigation of these murders, there was all kinds of fraud and corruption going on in the Suffolk County Police Department. So fast forward now it's 2023, but a year ago in February of 2022, there's a new sheriff in town, literally a new guy in charge of the Suffolk County Police Department, and he did something that they'd never done before. He put the police agencies together. So they formed a task force with the Suffolk County PD, with the FBI, with the New York State Police, and within 6 weeks, they had developed enough information that led to the break in the case that happened just a couple of weeks ago, and that was the arrest of Rex Heuermann as the suspect in 3 of the Gilgo Beach murders and believed to be linked to a 4th.
And this is a story that, as you say, wasn't getting traction because it doesn't start with those Gilgo 4. No. It starts with someone else. It starts with someone who may not even be part of this story. And it's her story and it's her mother's story that really are the catalyst for all of this, for the discovery of these bodies.
Absolutely. She's ground zero, if you will. Her name is Mary Gilbert. Mary Gilbert, I like to call her a mom on a mission, and she's the protagonist of the film we have on airing Sunday on Lifetime. Mary's daughter, Shannon, occasionally worked as an escort, as a sex worker, and she had a date and she didn't come back. And after about 5 or 6 days, Mary starts to get understandably concerned, and she goes to the Suffolk County Police. She knew where her daughter's date was. It was in Suffolk County. She'd come all the way from New Jersey to go to this end of Long Island. And she goes to the cops and she said, "My daughter hasn't come back." And that begins the story. And it was really this one woman pressing the cops, "You gotta investigate, you gotta investigate." She wouldn't take no for an answer. That, to me, just as a storyteller, was such a compelling way to tell this story, because I'm just personally in my own life, I don't know about you, you're a mom. I sort of believe a mom on a mission is unstoppable. And this lady, Mary Gilbert, was a mom on a mission. And so what we do in the Lifetime movie is we tell her story. We show how she was hitting roadblock after roadblock and just refusing, like, no, it's my daughter, I gotta find the answers. And before they found Shannon Gilbert's body, they started finding the other bodies. First, these 4 women who were wrapped in camouflage burlap. And what's interesting is we only now know that the burlap was camouflage colored. They never released that one fact in the beginning when these bodies were first found in 2010. So now that the case is moving forward in the prosecutorial realm, we're learning more that they've known for a very long time, but is only now coming out in public.
This is such a fascinating story to me as someone who has been following true crime for decades, who has grew up in an era of serial killers and remembers Son of Sam.
Oh, sure,
and
yeah,
those
right
stories.
here in New York.
Right here in New York City. This story to me feels like a turning point in how we process and absorb these stories, because this is the first time I can think of where the focus really did turn to the victims and their families. And this cipher, this boogeyman, became less of a player in it because it has been so much about these women and their stories who were marginalized for so long.
That's a really good point. These women were throwaways. They were sex workers. The investigators at the time that these bodies turned up actually said in press conferences, the people of Long Island can take comfort in the fact that these women were prostitutes. Help me understand as a woman why that's supposed to make me feel good.
Which happened with Peter Sutcliffe as well. And I think this is not uncommon.
No, but it just, I think to your point, at the time this was being said, it was obviously well before Me Too, but there was the beginning of a change in attitude. It was like, no, we're not going down that road anymore.
But Deborah, not that long ago, still actually not that long ago, in the span of our lives, that this
But
was
it was
how
13 years ago when the first bodies turned up. So that actually is a long time when you consider Me Too only happened, 3 years ago? If I'm getting my math right.
It's the pandemic, so
who knows?
It's more like 6, but that's because
was it really 6?
Yeah, I think it's
okay. Thank you for the correction.
It's okay. No, I'm just saying. I think it's 5 or 6, but that's only because
we've all lost 3 years of our life.
We all feel like we were just asleep for the past at least 3 years.
Exactly.
Absolutely, Deborah. But I think it is a real difference in how we look at it. But now we do have a suspect. We have a face that we may be able to tie to this story. When you heard about the arrest and you heard about the suspect, Rex Heuermann, was there anything about the profile, the person, the information that has come out that has surprised you?
No, not at all. No, in fact, the more we've learned and they've released only the smallest amount of evidence to make their case for the arrest, right, to achieve the indictment and go out and arrest this guy. And they did it very quickly because the investigators had reason to believe that he was on to them, that he knew that something imminent was going to happen, so they had to move in pretty quickly. But Rex Heuermann was a big, hulking guy. He's 6'4", 6'5", and he's a big, stout fellow. And there was an eyewitness who saw a big, hulking person. That eyewitness account was basically buried under pages and pages and pages of documentation in this thing. There was a vehicle in which this big, hulking person was seen, a particular type of Chevrolet truck, a new model truck at that time. Rex Heuermann owned that kind of truck. He actually deeded it over to his brother who lives in South Carolina. Rex Heuermann, they now know, had access to ultimate burner phones. And that's one of the things we'll have in the Lifetime movie is we really wanted to, here's Mary Gilbert's story, and you're gonna watch all that happen. And then after the film, we're going to walk the viewer through broad strokes what happened to lead to the arrest of Rex Heuermann. And what they were able to do, imagine how many people travel every day from Long Island, New York, here into Manhattan, to work. And yet they were able to, out of the thousands and thousands and thousands of people who do that every day, they were able to parse it down to one individual using telephone technology to triangulate the burner phones and his locations. And after using new DNA technology, there was some DNA evidence degraded on the victims. But 2 pieces of evidence in particular really nailed this case. There were female hairs found, not belonging to the victims, on some of the victims. That hair belonged to Rex Heuermann's wife. Transfer evidence, right, off of his person onto the victims. And in the burlap bag in which one of the victims was found was a single male hair. Now, at the time, DNA technology did not allow them to do a deep dive, if you will, on what that DNA evidence said. But newer technology that's been developed in the last 13 years enabled them to make a precise link. And using that information from this new technology, they got pizza crusts from a pizza box that Heuermann had thrown out as his office in New York City, where he worked as an architect, matched the two up, and bing, 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 we've got our guy. Obviously, this goes to court, it has to be proven, but this is what the evidence indicates.
Deborah, did you think an arrest would ever come? Because this case went so cold for so long, and it was mired in corruption and incompetence for so long. Did you think this trail was always going to stay cold?
I wouldn't have put a big bet that it would ever have been solved. I mean, I'm one of these people, the glass is always half full. That's just the way I am. So I'm always hopeful that this would be a case that would be solved. There were a couple of things, though, that led one to think that maybe there could be. There had been no evidence for over a decade. And then about 2 years ago, there was this belt buckle that was revealed at a press conference out in Suffolk County. And it was either HW or HM, depending on which. And who knows what that means. That may have no bearing on the case whatsoever. But that was the first evidence in years. And then the formation of the task force. It was like, well, okay, it's about time. Let's see if, political pressure, because by that point, people were going, wait a minute, you've got this corrupt entity, you've thrown these people in jail from the Suffolk County Police Department, you've cleaned house, you say, how about looking at some of your cold cases? And so I think there was reason on the part of the victims' families to hope that maybe they would get some answers. 4 families appear to now have those answers, but there's still 6 or 7 families that don't.
Right, there's still a lot of open questions. And more families, because we don't know if this suspect may be tied to other crimes.
And they're investigating that. They think that because of his connection to his brother in South Carolina, they're actually looking in that state and a couple of other locations for any possible unsolved crimes.
Deborah, you've been doing this for so long. I want to take a moment now to talk about you and how you're doing, because doing this kind of work for as long as you've done it, covering the kind of stories you've done, it takes a toll.
Oh no, it doesn't take a toll at all. It is so interesting. Are you kidding? It is so interesting. I was the kid in 4th grade. I attribute my entire career to my 4th grade teacher, Mrs. Eddings. I was that obnoxious child, was constantly raising her hand, how come? And finally, Mrs. Eddings, she couldn't take it anymore. She said, you know what, Debbie, that's a really good question. She sent me to the library. She said, why don't you look it up, do a report, and come back and tell the whole class so we'll all know the answer. And it took me about 3 or 4 reports for me to realize if I would just shut up, she was going to get there in her presentation. But later I realized Mrs. Eddings gave me the tools for my career. As a journalist, I wonder how come. And I get to go ask those questions and find out and do a report for the whole country. So how great is that? So no, it's not, I mean, sometimes you have an assignment that lasts crazy long and your kids don't get to see you or whatever, but no, it's so great. I mean, look, I've been doing this forever and I'm still just as jazzed about it.
Oh no, you're like lighting up talking about it.
I realize that and sorry, I'll turn the lights down.
No. I love seeing the lights on. I love seeing someone get this excited about telling a story that especially now seems like there may be answers, there may be some kind of resolution. The last few years have changed, I think, the way that we look at true crime, the way that it is reported in the media, and the way that we as consumers and curious aficionados of these kinds of stories, it has changed, and I want to know. I'll just ask because you seem to be doing it very well, but for those of us who are following these stories, it can take a toll. It can make you worried. It can make you scared.
Yes.
It can make you despair for the human condition. I'm going to be honest. Like
there's plenty of stories,
There's stories that can really, really take you down a dark road.
Yeah.
How do you think we can create these boundaries? Because it is really easy to get fascinated
and
go down those rabbit holes.
Yep.
And how do we crawl? Sometimes I feel like, how am I going to pull myself out of it?
How do we not go through life fearful when we know there are serial killers who can pick you up?
Especially as women.
Yeah. It's funny, my kids joke that my older son, he says, Mom, I was the boy in the bubble. I said, what are you talking about? He said, Mom, everything I ever wanted to do, you guys had done a story at Inside Edition about why it was dangerous. You can't have Heelys. Remember those shoes that were like, you can't have Heelys? I forget why. You couldn't wear Crocs because those got caught in the escalators and you would lose your foot. There were like every single thing he wanted to do. I wrote a book about not doing video games, like that's going to give you bad dreams. So yes, you can absolutely grow up fearful and cowering at the prospect of everything. Or I prefer knowledge is power. When you know these things exist, when you know and you follow these cases and you learn how these women ended up in these situations, for instance, if you were working as a call girl, you would know the things not to do because of the bad experiences that other people have had. I think a lot of people gravitate toward true crime just as something that they like to listen to in the podcast or watch the movies on Lifetime or wherever, is we all want to try to figure it out. You know, if the story is told well, they're dropping those little breadcrumbs, and if you pick up the right breadcrumbs, maybe you can solve the crime. And so I think people get excited for that reason. But also, as a reporter on Inside Edition, one of the things that we very consciously try to do is share information on how you can not be a victim. For instance, you've probably never talked to anybody who, in one of the many interviews you've done here on Salon, told you that if you are a kidnap victim and you get thrown in the trunk of the car, what you need to try to do, whatever way they've got your body in the car, is pull the brake light wires. Because eventually, those brake light wires are going to mean that the lights are not working and the car may be pulled over. That is one way to help save yourself if you were a kidnap victim. Did you know that?
I didn't. I know about like trying to kick out the tail light.
Kick out the tail light, and newer cars, but my luck is if I were to get kidnapped, I wouldn't have a kidnapper with a new car. The new cars have a thing that you can pull. It lights up in the dark, you can pull it, and it pops the trunk open. But I don't think I'll be lucky to have that kind of a kidnapper.
Deborah, I like that you aspire to a higher class of kidnapper.
Give me the kidnapper with the new model car.
You know, at least I want a classy kidnapper. You know, you've given us all something to wish for. Deborah Norville, thank you so much. The movie, again, it's airing again on Lifetime with new material.
Yes.
Gilgo Beach Killer. Is that the new title? There's a different titles, right?
No, that's it. The Gilgo Beach Killers.
That's the new title. Thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you so
much. Come back anytime.
I would love to.